Lisa Wallace in the house this morning. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it. District 6 candidate, Lisa Wallace. Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
I'm taking notes, Lisa, because I'm in District 6. So what
Okay,
you
perfect.
say, I mean, it's personal now.
Right,
It's personal.
right. No pressure.
That's right. Yeah. So tell us about who is Lisa. Tell us about your family. Yeah.
Okay. I was born and raised here. I went to East Valley High School, and I moved back after college as a young professional. I have primarily worked in the juvenile justice and child welfare realms. I am married. My husband and I own and operate a physical therapy practice. I have twin 6-year-old boys.
Oh, boy.
Mm-hmm. We had a peanut butter and jelly meltdown on the way here. And so what else do you want to know?
What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Well, before I was campaigning,
I'm making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches,
Right,
Lance,
exactly.
apparently.
Exactly.
That's right.
I like to read. I like to cook.
Yeah.
I would like to tell you I'm a gardener. I'm an aspiring gardener.
You say you can say it, but your yard
Right.
might
Yes.
differ.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And what do you do now for a living?
What do I do for a living? Well, I'm a mom, and then
You guys, you work at this physical.
I do.
Yeah.
I
'Cause
do.
was
I
gonna
do
say-
marketing and recruitment.
I was going to say you're good at maybe twisting arms, so that's the kind of person we want.
I am not clinical in any
Okay,
stretch.
okay,
I leave
good.
that to the professionals.
Okay.
But I do marketing and provider recruitment. So it takes a lot of energy actually to recruit medical folks. That's a full-time job. And I do some staff training.
All right.
And then I also do work occasionally with nonprofits. I do board training, board development. I had a contract I was the interim executive director at Rod's House for 6 months while they looked for a permanent CEO.
So as you look at your day and the pie of your day, you have that little sliver left. Why did you decide, I'm going to run to city council? I want to be in city.
That's a great question. I decided to run. My dad always wasn't a man of many words, but he really believed talk's cheap and actions matter. And I realized I'd lived here long enough and that I have a pretty unique skill set. And I think that I decided to offer some help, and we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if people want to take me up on it. But I think that my background in juvenile corrections and social work, along with having employees and understanding what it's like to employ people, is a pretty unique skill set. The public sector and the private sector are two really different things.
I can hear her now. People call it, she goes, I have a unique set of skills. You ever see the old Taken movie with Meow? Okay.
Yeah.
I
movie
will
trailer.
find you, and I will hire you. So,
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, that's right.
well, what are you hearing out in the district? District
Yeah.
6, we're kind of away from downtown, where all of the downtown issues seem to get the attention, but we'll live in a city that has a downtown, and we go down there, us West Siders. So what are you hearing from folks about the issues that are of the greatest concern as you make your way around the district?
Dave, it's been kind of interesting. So District 6, I've been going neighborhood to neighborhood, and each of those neighborhoods seems to have some micro interests. Anybody who lives on near an arterial or major thoroughfare wants to talk about road quality.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
And then in some neighborhoods, it continues to come up about excessive driving speed. So traffic
bumps or-
traffic
yeah.
calming devices
Yeah.
seem to be something people want to talk about. And then obviously pressing everyone, it comes up repeatedly, is the perception of safety and what they believe their safety is or isn't, and our increased crime rate.
And I think that's you just said something that no one else has said yet, and I think is a real true distinction. Oftentimes there is a difference in your perception and what the numbers, the practical realities would show. Still, they say perception is reality, but at some point you have to also yield to the physical facts. I'm afraid I'll be shot. Well, let's take a look. Nobody's been shot here in 97 years in this region, so you're probably, well, it's about time then, isn't it? No, it's not. So you got to, as a council person, you have to balance those fears and concerns with the practical realities of what you're up against, and I think it's an important distinction, so good on you.
Thanks.
Okay, so you're hearing these things. Do you start in your mind instantly solving these problems? You got solutions yet, or what is your take on where we are at crime-wise in our city, not just the District 6, because your decisions will affect the whole town.
Right, the whole city community as a whole. So I think it's interesting you talk about perception versus reality. So I worked in criminal justice for 20 years, and for 20 years I talked about crime rate being down, and it's much less than what people perceive it to be. However, taking the last year into account, listening to Chief Murray, we're 450% above national average for violent crime. That's unacceptable. Do I have instant solutions? Absolutely not. But I do have a background, and I still have relationships, and I am pretty skilled at bringing people together and listening. I do think one thing with regards to criminality and youth crime, specifically, and youth violent crime, we have to have a conversation about this is an us problem. It's not a them problem. This isn't a one side of 16th or the other problem. We have got to put faith leaders, youth serving organizations, law enforcement. We're not going to hire our way out of this. This is all of us coming together. You know, I was really surprised to hear people's reactions to the book study.
Yeah.
You know, people online were pretty vile about that. And I didn't understand that, because what would be wrong with us sitting down and reading about what another community did? I thought we haven't done this before. Let's try this. Let's have a conversation, because this really is a reflection of all of us. People that feel connected to their communities in meaningful ways and have access to connection and economics don't hurt one another, with the exception of domestic violence, and that's a whole nother show, which is also very high.
Right, but also to what role does a city government play in people's personal lives that manifest themselves in violence, unless there's no economic opportunities and some of those other things? Depends on how deep you want to backtrack, right? And then it's up to your resources and sort of the feel of your fellow council mates whether they want to go there or not. What about, we know you're active or interested in homelessness, housing, that sort of thing. Give us a quick, at least a snapshot of that.
So like I mentioned, I did have the privilege of serving as the interim executive director of Rod's House, which is a youth and young adult serving agency that works with young people experiencing homelessness. And they serve, a lot of people don't know this, 13 to 24. So they do reach into that young adult range. And I learned a lot in those 6 months. At the same time, joining the Planning Commission, I was learning about housing. I was somebody who, I think like many people, hear the term affordable housing and immediately conjure up the sort of image of maybe a subsidized apartment complex. But really, attainable housing is a problem for all of us across the board. It is a crisis. There is nothing to buy. I could be recruiting doctorate level PT to town, and there is nowhere for them to live. So these are things that have economic impact to all of us. And the thing that I've learned most about housing, both attainable and affordable, is that there's this pie and this sort of spectra, and we have to have more housing in all the demographic areas. So there's some really great stuff in the Housing Action Plan about removing barriers for developers. We just had a study session yesterday about cottage housing, which is something I, before this, hadn't been that familiar with, which is small houses clustered together with shared space. So it's not this isn't gonna
we called it the dorm back in the day, but yeah.
Except for they're independent.
Yeah,
yes.
well.
So it's not gonna be quick.
Yeah. Complex. You don't need to hear my take. I'll tell you my take later. But if there's a real shortage of housing, that sounds like opportunity for some builders.
Absolutely.
And as long as the city makes the approach a fast track and affordable based on how they conduct themselves, separate story.
Yeah.
All right. So we've kind of asked people about this too, as they look at the council and what it's accomplished over the last few years, how it's gone about that, and what's been good and what's been bad. What's your take on the interpersonal strife, and what do you point to as accomplishments or areas to really jump on?
You know, something I think that they did well, and that I feel good as a citizen about, is they took in a really difficult time and worked really hard to rebuild the reserves. I believe they're at 21 or 22% now, somewhere in that range, and that couldn't have been easy. It really couldn't have. It had to have been difficult decisions that frustrated some people. I applaud that. I think, or if you haven't tapped out your rainy day fund, during the last 18 months, then good on ya. Certainly, you could argue the feds have been helpful in that, but
Well, they have.
but right. So
Yeah, big time.
so
All right, but you're right. We're at a time when business is down, tax revenues are down, yet we're still trying
Right.
to conduct
Yeah.
the business that we can and backfill. But you know it's interesting because you're going to hear this. Do you want roads or do you want a fat reserve? Because roads cost a lot, and they cost for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So what you're going to think is like a big road deal. All of a sudden, you won't see anything for 15 years because we can't afford it. But so here, there's a lot. It's always interesting, having been through the process, the learning curve that there is awaiting you and others when that happens. But you still got to have the zest and the interest and the zeal going forward. What would you say needs to be worked on most? What's like the first thing that you would try to find your way into having some kind of influence on or be part of moving ahead?
So I believe firmly that municipal government is public service, first and foremost, and that it should do what only it can do and do it well. I think that one area that we could stand to improve upon is economic development. We never replaced the department.
Right.
It hasn't been a priority. This isn't a tiny little town. We need to place emphasis on that. Does the city have a responsibility to start business? No, but it does have a responsibility to make it easier and more attractive for people who do want to do that.
KIT News Time 8:26. We're talking to Lisa Wallace, a District 6 candidate. Lisa, tell us how you describe yourself politically.
How I describe myself politically. I was raised in a family. I am old enough to remember when we sat down at our table and talked about who was the better candidate. So for that job, I voted for plenty of Republicans and I voted for plenty of Democrats over the years, and I see myself as an independent. Quite frankly, I think both of the parties have spent too much energy, too much time, and way too much money pandering to their fringe, and I don't have an allegiance to either one of them right now.
Well said. If you could wave a magic wand and solve one of Yakima's problems, what would you do first? I mean, if you really could, what do you think starts our city more, either unites our city more, either makes our city safer? What do you think is the number one thing that we need to do for Yakima as someone who thinks the city's job is to serve people and you want to serve the people by way of that vehicle? What is it that would drive you the most, that you would be most excited about?
Wow, if I had a magic wand.
Because I have a magic wand. I can loan it to you.
Okay, perfect.
I have one too. So there's two.
Let's dust those off.
Yeah.
I think probably my background in juvenile justice would lead me to say that if I had a magic wand and unlimited resources, I would run down to LA, talk to Father Greg Boyle, and open a Homeboy Industries in Yakima.
You're pretty impressed with him and what he's
I really
done.
am.
Yeah.
I've followed him for many, many years based on my career. And what he did is, I often wonder why we haven't replicated it. And maybe it's him. Maybe he's the secret sauce, and it quite possibly he could be. Because but his belief system is that access to economics decreases violence. It seems kind of reasonable.
Yeah, that's right.
And what they've done is extraordinary, and it worked. And so if I had a magic wand and I had an unlimited budget, I would figure out how to replicate that and start employing some really incredible young people. You know, I've spent a lot of years working with kids in gangs and incredibly talented young people.
Speaking of economics, quick question, income tax. How do you feel about that in our state and in our city?
I feel terrible about that.
Okay. Well, there you go.
I am opposed to an income tax 100%.
So everyone just got into the elevator with you. There's your elevator speech. Tell us.
It's crowded.
Yeah.
I feel very claustrophobic.
I know,
just
you
want to
loud.
say that
Yeah.
right
So
off the bat.
Yeah, but you got a chance to tell them all why they should be voting for you, Lisa.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think they should vote for me because I have a really unique background. I think I'm a candidate that listens well. I see this as a service job. I see that municipal government is the government closest to the people, but it also has a job that only it can do, and I want to do it well. I think that a background in juvenile justice, child welfare, some work in working with young people that are homeless, as well as owning a business and employing 15 to 20 people at any given time, and the challenges that are inherently come with that. And it's a private healthcare business, no less. So I deal with Medicare. I think it's a pretty unique background, and I like listening to people. I want to hear what's important to them. So I think I would do a good job.